Hi, this is Matt Miller from Ditch That Textbook, and today we're going to be talking to a good friend of mine that we've bumped into each other and worked together a lot over the last couple of years. And her name's Paula Neidlinger, and she does some really cool stuff to connect her students to real audiences all over the world. So I can't wait to hear some of the things that she has to talk about. So Paula, can you introduce yourself a little bit for us?
Yeah, thank you, Matt, for having me. Paula Neidlinger, and I'm up here in Plymouth, Indiana, northern part of the state, Lincoln Junior High, and this year I've been doing 8th grade humanities and interactive media. In the past, I've taught language arts for quite a long time. So.
Very good. And you've been, gosh, we were just making a list before we got started here, and I think we've got about six different tools that you use to connect your kids to authentic audiences. And whenever I've heard you talk, and on Twitter and on your blog and everything, I just see how important this is to you. And why do you think it's important to get kids connected to real people outside of school?
I think, first of all, because nowadays they're connected in general, and so I want them to understand that there's a lot of positive ways to use media itself rather than just playing games on it. And I want them to know what's really going on out in the world, and because I think sometimes youth they kind of shut themselves off from what's really going on out there. So I want them to understand that this is their world, they're a part of it, and they're the ones that are going to be taking people like you and me, taking care of us later. So I want it to be a positive influence and not a negative. That's my main goal.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's dive right in. I think we're going to try to come up with some ways to make this practical for the readers and the viewers, and just lots of different ways to incorporate these into class. And so we're curious to see how you use some of these. So the first one I have on my list is Twitter. You actually have your kids tweet during class sometimes, right?
Yes, yes. I'm a huge Twitter person. I have like 6 different accounts, and again, I think it all goes back to using it in a positive way, which is just kind of why we, I guess, focus on digital citizenship in the first place. It's very easy to use it negatively, which I think on the news nowadays, that's all we see is all the negative ways. So I think the classroom is the best place to start off showing, all right, how can we use this in a positive way? Twitter, sometimes I do it just as a class. We get on with a class and we literally just tweet about something that we're doing just for that purpose. Sometimes we've done it as a family, so we do a tweet up at nighttime where maybe we've read a novel and we want to get the parents involved, so it's a great way to get parents involved as well. We've also, if you don't care, I'll just go on and say one thing we did this past week. Is that okay with Twitter?
Yes, definitely.
Sure. I'm going to incorporate another thing at the same time, but we talked to a man named Ron Rosano. He's out in California, and I literally found him on Twitter. So I was doing something. I'm going to go expand here a minute, but I was connecting like the westward movement in the 1800s to space nowadays, like, is this our next movement? And so the students were trying to think, all right, where are we going to go next? How's it going to look, etc. So Twitter allowed me to get out there and find out what's going on. I found this guy, Ron Rosano, tweeted him, and before I knew it, 2 days later, I was doing a Google Hangout with him. So
awesome.
That is the positive side of Twitter, using it correctly, of course.
Mm-hmm. And what kind of conversations were your students having with him?
It was awesome. At first, they were in awe because we actually had a conference with a lady in Houston and he in California. So we did a 3-way Google Hangout. Wow. And which was incredible. And at the same time, they were doing slide shares, so they were showing them live images of what they had done. And then she went on and did Google Earth at the same time, pinpointed Lincoln Junior High, and showed what we would look like, from out where they had been. So and in fact, one student actually said to me, he goes, "Where do you find these people?" And I go, "Social media, you know." And he's because they were so impressed, like, "How did you find this person?" And that's what I wanted him to know is that social media is awesome if you know how to use it the right way. There's so many positive things you can do with it.
Absolutely, yeah. Now you mentioned tweeting as a family. Does that mean connecting, parents and kids all together in the school community and talking about issues?
Yes, that's what we do. We set it for a certain time, like 7 o'clock at night. Um, and it's just a way for, number one, parents to understand that there is a positive side to Twitter. I think some parents don't even use Twitter because they don't understand it in the first place. And that's not a bad thing. It's just, it's maybe not part of their generation. But they are part of the world right now, so they do need to understand what the students are doing in the classroom and see that, wow, this is a great way to communicate, and it's a way for kids to express themselves very concisely, because in language arts we, of course, work on precise and concise language, and with only 140 characters, it's a way for me to also teach language arts at the same time. I would never tell them that, but that's what I'm doing, actually. So.
It's your secret teaching method to try to teach them when they don't think they're being taught, right?
Secret ammo, exactly.
Yes, yes. Okay. All right, so those are some good ideas for Twitter. Let's move on to e-portfolios and blogs. I know you've had your students connected through, I think it was Blogger, and having them creating their own e-portfolios, and it seems like whenever I go over and check out that site, they're always doing something different, and there are all these cool examples out there. So maybe you can tell us some of the things that your students post there and what they do.
Sure. E-portfolios I started several years ago, and I did it through Blogger just because I thought that was somewhat an easier way to do a website. It's great because it becomes a place to blog through a post, and it also becomes kind of a warehouse to house the things that they are doing not only in my class but at the other classrooms. What I've done, which has been a very cool, in fact, ironically, I just had a tweet yesterday. Because of Twitter, I have met people all over the United States, and I actually started a team called Teach to Blog. I almost spaced out there. Sorry.
I remember that. Yeah.
Sorry about that. Well, ironically, one of the guys contacted me this past week and said, "Hey, our kids have just uploaded some through Genius Hour, some Genius Hour blogs. We need you guys to go on, get your kids on there." So this week when we get back, there's about 8 of us from all around the country now and that's what we do. We get on there, we get our kids on there. So, when we talk authentic audience, here's students from all over the United States, and they're blogging with each other, and that's what we want, because I think that's what's happened in education. Sometimes kids do quote projects, and what's the point of them? I have a real hard time with the word project, because I always ask them, where's it going to go? Where do you want it to go? And what's the purpose of it? So the purpose is to have other people read it and look at it and interact with it. That's the purpose. And once you start doing that, that gets kids excited, like, oh my gosh, such and such in Minnesota, replied to my blog. Well, yeah, so we've got to get that out there. We've got to help students get their thoughts and ideas out to other people.
Yeah, definitely. Do you have any like little cool stories that have come along with kids blogging with other kids? Anything that sticks out? No is an acceptable answer to this, by the way.
Yeah. I think just like last year, I know that kids we put a gadget on there that counts the flags, okay, and the flags from other countries, and they had more fun looking at the different countries of kids that had got on their blog and replied to them. I mean, like actual excitement, like, oh my gosh, I got China today, That's when we talk about global audience, that's what we want for students. And there is a lot of blogging challenges out there that teachers can subscribe to that involve you. I mean, I started my own blogging challenge with, again, those group of teachers from across the United States. I literally tweeted out going, I'm starting a blogging challenge. Who'd like to join me? And I got classrooms in there, and we just did it. You know, you don't have to always wait for somebody else to start it. Start one yourself, you know. And if you only got 2 or 3 people, that's awesome. That's still exposing the kids out there, and that's what we want. So
yeah, absolutely. And I love that. You don't have to wait for somebody to start up some big official program. You don't have to wait for a mover and shaker to actually do something. You can start it yourself, and it doesn't mean that you have to have 100 different classes or 100 different, you know, teachers or whatever. You can get something started, and it doesn't. Sometimes when you have those smaller groups, like you said, if you get 2 or 3 classes, it's kind of more intimate, and you get to know the kids a little bit better, don't you think?
Right. Oh, absolutely. And I think that's what the kids like, when they know people are actually reading what they're writing. That's just the bottom line. You know, then it's relevant all of a sudden. And then all of a sudden the English kicks back in, because now they're really looking at their sentence structure and their punctuation, and like, oh my gosh, people are actually reading this, and it starts to make a difference. You know?
Yes, definitely. I love that. Now, you said your e-portfolios were kind of like a warehouse for your students' work. What are some other kinds of things that they'll post on there other than just your standard blog post?
You know, this year, because I'm doing humanities, we've really focused on current events. And I don't know how it started, but it has become, I think because they're 8th graders, and I really, really feel like it's important that they know what's going on in the world. And there's a lot of negative things, but you know, they need to understand. And so we've had a lot of really good discussions, and then a lot of follow-up writing based on that. And although they're blog posts, you know, I think it's real important for them to express their feelings, regardless of whether they agree or disagree with what's going on. I encourage them to use their other subjects. You know, if they've created in music, in band, for instance, or music, you know, if they like writing music or writing poetry, it doesn't have to be official school business. You know, put those in there so that you have them. And nowadays we already know that, especially college applications, a lot of times they're looking for a portfolio. And so this is something that can carry with them literally for as long as they want, you know, that they can pull out for any type of application process or job interview in the future. So, you know, yeah, sorry.
Do you actually have students that will post their own things into their e-portfolio that aren't required for class?
Oh, absolutely, because
Wow, that's awesome.
you know, that's what I want them to do, because you know, we've got kids, you know how there are students that just do not connect with school, and I know that, but you also see them doodling back there, and it's like, all right, why don't you put some of these graphic designs that you're doing when you really should be listening to me, but you know, it's okay. But let's get them in there, and then you know, I found a couple of really cool apps that I actually guide them to and go, why don't you do this, and then let's upload it and let's get it in there so that you've got it. So
Yeah. I love that, because that gets into the whole passion-driven learning. What are they excited about, and what are they interested in? And then you can get that into their portfolio, and so it doesn't just have to be the prescribed curriculum. They can kind of customize it for themselves.
Exactly, and that's what I want. You know, I do Genius Hour as well. This year I called it Innovation Hour. And again, that's kind of where we, you know, I have them put kind of a journal type thing as they go, and then a place to house kind of the final thoughts on their project, or again, I didn't like to use the word project, but whatever they ended up doing, you know, at least a place that's housed as well. So yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Whenever I hear someone ask about or talk about Genius Hour, I'm always curious about what are some of the things that your kids have created through Genius Hour.
You know, this year we're kind of winding that up. This year I did Genius Hour just a little bit differently. One of the programs I like is, which I talked to you earlier, was the Write a Novel in a Month program. And, you know, I want students, because unfortunately in our curriculum anywhere, we don't have what I call just creative writing. I can't spend a month just writing a novel, unfortunately. But I have students out there that love to write, share my passion for writing. So one of the Genius Hour projects this year was write a novel in a month. So those students that are interested in that, I pull into the other room, and together we write, and we do that every Monday, so that by the end of the year they have a novel published. I also did something through Kiva. I really think that that's an awesome program, and I want kids to understand the importance of service to other people and how can you help other people. So I have some students from those groups, and then other students kind of chose their own. Probably one unique one this year was only 3 students, one of which was a football player. Their junior high team won the conference, okay? Well, he wanted everyone to have T-shirts, so he decided to do a fundraiser. I should say he and 2 other girls to do a fundraiser. They designed the shirts themselves. They went through the whole process of the ordering and setting up the whole thing, and then they donated all the money to Make-A-Wish Foundation. And yeah, it was very cool. But the cool thing at the end was when he came up to me and he goes, I didn't realize how hard doing a fundraiser is. I don't know that I'd ever do it again. I was like, why is that? And he's like, well, because I did this wrong and this wrong and this wrong. And I was like, okay, well, what did you learn? He goes, this. And I go, well, then it was a success, because the whole point was to learn. It's not whether, it was good. You ended up with X amount of dollars. It might not have been your goal, but you still gave money. The T-shirt place, when they found out what the kids were doing, actually donated back $50 to send on to Make-A-Wish, and then gave the school extra shirts because they were so, I will say one other, if that's okay, if you have time.
Yes, go ahead.
This one is awesome, actually. This actually happened last week. A boy came up to me and he goes, I failed you, Mrs. Neidlinger. I go, what are you talking about? And he goes, well, I failed you. He goes, my project didn't work. And I was just like, what? And well, he was trying to build headphones from scratch. And
wow,
so
that's amazing.
I know. On his own, he ordered some parts, okay? He put them all together and he got them to work. But he said, I learned that you get what you paid for, which yes, is true. And apparently, he didn't buy maybe all the best things, but it worked. And so I go, well, I don't understand how you failed me. He goes, well, they only worked for like an hour and then da-da-da-da. And I was like, well, then it was a success because it worked. And he goes, yeah, but then they don't work. So, so then we went through the whole thing of, okay, what should you have done differently? How can you fix them? Geez, could you start a summer job where you fix people's headphones, etc.? And by the time we were done, he was smiling. I was like, wow, I don't really get where you failed, And so it was a cool learning moment, because that's supposed to be the idea of Genius Hour, is the learning process. So that was very cool.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's so easy to happen with kids, is they see it as a success, or and that's sort of the way that school seems to have taught them, is that it's either an A or an F, or it's a pass or a fail, and they think sometimes if it didn't work out the way that I planned it, then it's not a success. And I remember hearing Don Lettrick, who wrote the book Pure Genius just recently, who does innovations, and it's 100% of the time Genius Hour, and he talked about a student that he had that tried to organize, it was something like a fundraiser, I think, through it was volleyball or softball or something, and there were just all of these steps, and it was so much more complicated than she expected. And at some point she came to him just in tears and is going, this is such a failure, this is awful, and he's going, yeah, but look at all the lessons that you learned. You learned how the process works to do this. You learned about liability, you learned about fundraising, you learned about all of these things, and those are all lessons that she could use later on in life. And so that's so important, I think, for kids to remember that even if the project doesn't work out perfectly, there's still great lessons from it, right?
That's exactly what happened in both these. And there's that with the fundraising thing especially. I mean, he had no clue, and I had the exact same conversation. So yes, I have the Pure Genius book. It's a great book. So.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so now I want to get into. Oh no, wait, we haven't talked about Skype and Google Hangout. And I know you did a Google Hangout with Mr. Rosano here recently, but what are some other ways that you've used these sort of video chat services to connect your kids to people outside of the school?
I also did it when I was really, again, it was kind of at the beginning of the year when we were working more on community service, like looking at great things other kids do around the country. And we actually did a Google Hangout with them. Unfortunately, it was just the mother because the boy was in school. And of course, now you caught me off guard, so I can't remember his name. But he's
That's
the one.
okay.
Sorry, he's the one though that started the shoes, and he had gone to oh like centers with his mom to help her with underprivileged, and he saw these kids without shoes, and he's like, boy, I want to help those kids get shoes. And so he started very small, once again, just taking donations through Twitter. He kind of advertised it through social media, and before he knew it, he started this awesome program. It's national now, where, and so they were showing his shoes, etc. So we did that in the auditorium. I mean, we brought in all of our classes together, and just our grade, and that was awesome again. And then all these kids came up and go, I want to help. I want to do this. What can we do to get involved with this kid and help with the program? And sometimes I just think, especially for me when I live in a small community, if you don't expose students to what's out there, unfortunately there are a lot of kids that don't ever get exposed. They're, for whatever reasons, and some kids are lucky. My kids, I've taken places, but not all kids are so lucky. And I believe that Google Hangouts and Skyping allows students to really just talk to an author. I mean, authors are on Twitter all the time. All you got to do is go, hey, we're doing this. Could you talk? I mean, I've never had anybody turn me down, like this Ron guy. I mean, he was like, oh, absolutely. What time? And he even got up at 6 in the morning his time to do this the other day. So, which was awesome. And he did it
That's
twice
sacrifice.
that day.
Yeah.
It was very, yeah. That's what I mean. There's nice people out there. All you got to do is ask. I mean, look at you. I've only had 2 cups of coffee. It's a Saturday morning, and here I am with you. See?
Yeah, that's right. That's a good point. I mean, who in so many other professions would get up before their full allotment of coffee and get on and talk about their profession on a Saturday, right?
Exactly. But that's what I mean. People are willing, and social media is, I would say that not all schools are positive about using social media, because you're right, there's a lot of things that can go wrong, and once you open up everything on the computers, you're right, kids are going to get on things they shouldn't get on, but it just all goes back to digital citizenship and teaching them the positives about it. And I think that's why getting parents involved in like Twitters at home and so forth is important, so that they see the relevance of social media and how it can be used, in a positive.
Definitely. Okay, we're starting to run out of time a little bit, but we've still got enough time for you to talk about what I think is one of your big passions right now. And you and your students have started a radio station. And I want to hear about this and what some of the lessons are that the kids are learning through it, and all of that.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'll probably babble now. Okay. My original degree was telecommunications, was radio and television, and so this year one of the new classes I taught was interactive media. We already have a school television station, and so this year I just went up and said, I'd like to have a school radio station, and he was like, what? And I was like, I just think it'd be awesome. Okay, so I just did my research, and I found a company called Backbone Radio. They're in Boston, and they are what they are. They are the backbone of the whole system. And all it requires is my Mac computer. That's it. And you run everything through the computer, because it's internet radio is what it is. So it runs 24/7. And I do all the programming of the music, so I have all music in there. We belong to the IBS, which is the Intercollegiate Broadcasting System, and we have a board. A very, you do not have to be elaborate. It's a very simple board, but with my headphones and microphones and so forth. And so we actually do live radio, and I've now incorporated it into my classrooms. So for instance, I'll give you an example. When we were doing the Revolutionary War, the students created their own, I would say, like a radio broadcast during that time period, and based on some research they had done. So they were like news reporters at a specific scene, like at the Tea Party, and they even put commercials of the time in. And so I took them all into the studio, and they each broadcast as a team. They were awesome. And so now, like, they beg, can we use the radio, in our class? And so now I just roll it right in there, and we just use it part of my class all the time. So it's podcasting, a step up, because now I can program it. I can make it come out as many times a day as I want. You can literally get it on your TuneIn app on your phone. So you could be driving down the road and, just plug your phone into your radio and you can listen. It's called Storm Radio now. So best thing I've ever done. So next year, I haven't even told you this yet, but I'm going to be teaching mass media all day long next year now.
Are you ever going to teach the same classes from year to year? Is this ever going to happen?
Probably no. No, but I incorporated newspaper this year, and they already do a website, and so I have everything, right into the website. The radio station is streamed, so it's probably the coolest thing I've ever done that I think is awesome for kids. The kids love it. They actually come in at 7:30 in the morning or 7:15 in the morning so they can do live radio talk show. We now have a phone system that Backbone set us for us, so we have our own phone numbers so you can call in, talk to the DJs. And they give up their lunch hours. They just want to be on the radio. And so when kids are like begging, you're like, okay, this is great. It teaches, speech communication. I can't even go there with that. They write all their own stories, so they're in there. They're researching, so they're looking up current events. They're writing. That's everything we want. So,
yes, absolutely.
So
yeah. So as far as, since we're kind of talking about connecting to authentic audiences, obviously, listeners to this could come from anywhere. Have you had any sort of feedback of, who's listening to it, or where it's being accessed, or do you have anything? I know it's still sort of early maybe for that, but do you have anything?
Yeah, they actually have stats on all of that. They and I can get into that. It shows me who's listening right now, where from, how many listeners we have at a time. You can go on to our TuneIn and you can follow us. So we have followers, of course, and and it's just now starting. But the cool thing is that because we're licensed, I can load. I load music on there, so there's music playing all the time. The kids make their own commercials, and we have actual sponsors that pay, which is very cool because we run TV. Yeah, and it's a community involved, because when they know they're on the radio, there we go. But the best thing is the audience. People in California, wherever, are listening, and again, we go back to that authentic audience, and it's like. The best thing was sometimes I record it and then I put it on. That way, if they blooper, I can change it. But now we just do live all the time. And the first time we were on there, the boy was reading his stuff and he's like, oh crap. And I go, what? He goes, whoops. And he goes, I'm sorry. And I go, it's all right. You already said it. it's done and gone. So they forgot. And so there's a lot of lessons to be learned when you're doing, live radio. So.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's great. Okay. Yeah. We may have to have a whole separate conversation about doing radio with your students one of these days, but I feel like we're only just kind of scratching the surface here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So the one thing I also wanted to talk to you about is, and this seems like whenever I talk to teachers at conferences or presentations or whatever, and we talk about social media and blogging, especially with public versus private blogging, there's that whole thought of, do we actually put our students' work out there where other people can see it? Do we attach their names to it? How far do we go with that, and what are the pros and the cons of it? And I think it scares a lot of people sometimes, but it really is something that you kind of have to weigh the good and the bad and make a decision on. And I wondered if you could just tell us a little bit about your take on all of that, because obviously at some point you've decided you want a lot of your students' work to be out there where other people can see it. So what is your take on that?
Um, well, I guess I've always just gone forward on that. So I keep the parents. I think it's important the parents know what you're doing. Number one, I do not put the student's last name on it. I always just put their first name and last name initial. But of course anybody can get in anybody's profile. I mean, nowadays anybody can really find out anything they want to find out, basically. One thing when we write, one of the things I do, I guess, at the very beginning of the year is I do have the kids Google themselves. I do that the very first thing at the beginning of the year. And because I want them to know that literally how much people know about them already. And they're kind of amazed to find out how much Google knows about them and everything they've done. And my point is with that is, like, you need to understand, so everything you put on Twitter or anything on Facebook, even though you delete it, and you know this as well, it's already there, and it's there forever. And they just kind of sit there with their mouth open, like, oh my gosh, and I think just doing something very simple like that right at the beginning is very powerful. And, so when they blog, I mean, I go in and I read them, and sometimes I have deleted things that they've posted on their blog, and then I go up and I go, you can't, even though it's just slang, it's like, just, you got to think who's reading this out there. And we want, and I like to be positive when I'm in the media. I don't like to write negative things, and I try to talk about that a lot in class. There's so much negativity in the world, and so when we're writing, let's talk positively. You can always be argumentative, but in the right way, in a debate form, and not just a negative opinion. So not all schools agree. And we've had some problems this year, and I don't even think I've shared that with you. Some of our things have actually got turned off now for a while because some high school students did some things that was beyond what's acceptable. And as everything goes, one person ruined it for everybody else. So now we're kind of gradually moving back up again. So it's a little disappointing to me because we had everything. We had Twitter, we had Pinterest, we had everything, and now we've had to back off a little bit. So, but it's all in the teaching process.
Yeah, definitely. And I've always thought with all of this, with kids and social media and posting things online and all, I've always thought that I want them to make mistakes when I'm around or when their teachers are around, so that they're a little bit more in a sort of a safe realm. And if they're going to learn those lessons, at least they can learn them with me, where we can talk about them instead of going out into their adult lives and potentially making a mistake that could cost them their job or cost them their standing in their community or something like that.
Exactly. And that's why it should be done at school. I mean, you're right. And our students are very lucky. They have their own Mac computers, laptops that they take home, and we've done that for 5 years now. So we're very progressive in that way, and that's why it's frustrating for me. We take all these steps forward, and then all of a sudden, like, whoops, wait, we better go backwards. Like, you can't go backwards. We already, crossed the threshold here. So, one mistake, okay, it's a mistake. Let's move on and let's learn from it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Okay. Well, great. This has been a wonderful conversation, as I knew that it was going to be. So can you tell my readers and viewers here on the video where they can get a hold of you if they have any questions or if they want to contact you about something that you do?
Oh, sure. Well, I guess my blog would be the easiest place. It's literacyshoptalk.com. And then, of course, get me on my Gmail, which is pneidlinger at K12 at Plymouth, Saturday, plymouth.k12.in.us. I have numerous websites connected to all of those, so there's several places they can get a hold of me that way.
Yeah.
Literacy Shop Talk's probably the easiest place.
Okay, and then you're also on your personal Twitter account is just at PNEID, right?
PNEID, right? Yes. And there's where you'll find the Storm Radio. I mean, you can find me at Storm Radio. which is on Twitter as well. You can find us at ljhdigitalstorm.com. That's our website, which houses our TV, radio, website, newspaper, which we have a newspaper now too. Yeah.
That's great.
I'll let,
Awesome.
I'll let you write all those things. There's lots of places to find me. So.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe you can email me some of those, and I'll get them into the blog post so that people can kind of click through and check out your stuff.
Kind of hard to hear and write them down. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, Paula, thank you so much for spending a Saturday with me and with the Ditch That Textbook community, and looking forward to seeing how people might implement this. So thanks again for coming on.
Matt, it was so good talking to you. And just so you know, just so everybody knows, Matt and I met through Twitter. So I think that's important to
That's
note.
right. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And we
And we ended one time, and we hadn't even met in face to face in person yet, and we got the slides and the presentation all figured out before we even met, and then we met on the day that we were supposed to present.
like 15 minutes ahead of time, yeah. So
Yeah.
and it was awesome. So
Yeah, I think that's such a cool story too. So I'm glad you brought that up. So, all right. Well, thanks so much, Paula.
thank you very much, Matt. We'll be talking, and I'm looking forward to. Have you made your announcement yet?
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, go ahead and say what you were going to say.
Okay, well, I was going to say Matt has a book coming out, so soon, I hope, and really excited to read that, and encourage everybody else to read that as well. So.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you
I
for
won't
that.
say the name or anything. I'll let you do all that surprise later. So.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.